Our biblical storyteller is having a bit of fun today. And now you hear this story told as justification for all kinds of things, including approving only heterosexual marriage. But the point for me is God wants Adam to be happy. God tries making all kinds of creatures, not caring which creature actually made Adam happy. If it was a cow, hey, you know. But God just wanted him to be happy. And don't we all want that? Don't we all want to live with some joy? But like Adam before Eve in this tale, joy is hard to come by. And when you don't have joy, sometimes you lose hope. This is a hard world. Getting through our days, which can be so overbusy, sometimes feels like all that we can do. Natural disasters, illness, grief, work stress, kids stress, elderly parent stress, school stress, they all take their toll. And our relationships, which Genesis says should be a source of our joy, can even become a reason hope is hard to find. But God wants us to have hope, and God brings hope out of situations that are desperate. The woman in this picture is Melanie Connect. The gentleman is Trevor Hahn. Melanie was born with spina bifida. Trevor lost his eyesight to glaucoma 5 years ago. You look at them and you think, it must be hard for them to have hope. Think of all the things they can't do. Melanie lives all of her life in a wheelchair. She didn't get to run around and play like other kids. Things a lot of us take for granted are really complicated for her. Think of what Trevor must miss. He used to be able to see. He knows what he's missing. And he knows he has become now dependent on others. Well, these two met twice at classes teaching sports to folks we now say have different abilities. And they realized that they could team up and help each other. So here they are now. They have become a hiking team. It just seemed like sense, Melanie says. He's the legs, I'm the eyes. Boom, together, we're the dream team. She says the best part is leaving that wheelchair far, far behind. Trevor notes that he never stopped hiking, even as he was losing his sight. He was relying on adaptive techniques, like following the sound of a bell. But he says, it didn't really give me a purpose. I was just following a bell. And I thought it would be really cool if I could have a purpose on the trail. And now he says, he's got his purpose. Together, in the most unlikely of situations, these two have found hope. They are completely dependent on each other, and it's wonderful. Think about all those times we've said, I could never do that. Maybe we should reconsider and have hope. God brings hope out of situations that are desperate. He was an NFL lineman, kind of famous, a Super Bowl champion, who is now playing for the Kansas City Chiefs. And he was building a cabin in the woods with some teammates, and as they were working, one of his teammates decided he needed something from the store, so they drove to the store, and he sat in the car as his friend went inside, and these were the thoughts of that NFL lineman. The time is coming when I will finally use one of those guns on my property. My injuries are mounting. Coach already has a role in taking away my starting position. Once my NFL career is over, I'll get in the truck, drive to the property, open the gun cabinet, and shoot myself in the head. I'm not building a cabin, I'm building a crypt. Ryan O'Callahan had a secret he had known since his youth. He was gay. He came from a family of tough guys, hunters and fishermen. The only thing he knew about gay people came from the jokes his family and friends told, stuff that was highly inaccurate, of course, but how was he supposed to know? So he became the antithesis of what he figured a gay man would be. He became a monster of a man and a really, really good player. And he admits that he played into acting like a complete jerk, which football players are often allowed to do in a desperate attempt to hide the truth. His suicide plan was the plan to seal that deal. But for some reason, he sat down with a psychologist working for the Chiefs, and for the first time in his life, he told her the truth. And she said, "So what?" And then she said something Ryan could scarcely believe. She said, "Ryan, you are not the only gay player in the NFL. Far from it." Ryan O'Callahan has just released a book about his journey, a journey through years of despair and self-hatred, but a journey that resulted in a life of incredible purpose, the purpose now of saving lives and helping those who struggle with their sexuality. I think there are times when all of us don't like ourselves very much. Ryan's story, it's a story of two things: learning to accept and love yourself and working to get better. Hope can be found in loving yourself and working to get better. God will have a hand in that work. God brings hope out of situations that are desperate. In Relevant magazine, Jason Jones tells a story that acknowledges that at some time every marriage is tested. He and his wife, Bree, had just lost their son. He had passed away in an accident, leaving them with their two daughters to try to somehow carry on. They had taken a family trip, which compounded Jason's emotion. And on the return home, he had quickly unpacked the car and began to break down, a fact that he hid from his wife and girls. And then he did an odd thing. He grabbed his electric clippers and his Bible, and he went out to the driveway. And he writes, "If the neighbors had seen me, I'm sure they would have called 911, because it had to be quite a sight. A grown man lying down on the driveway in the dark, crying, shaving his head. Even though I looked out of my mind, I did have a reason I wanted to shave my head. Just months before my son Jacob's accident, I had started cutting his hair with these clippers. For whatever reason, this was a way I felt closer to him. I wanted to cut my hair like his. Sounds strange, I know, but this type of behavior is actually par for the course with a bereaved parent." And then he grabbed his Bible and he started yelling verses out at God, crying out, "God, can you see how much I need you now? Where are you? How am I going to make it?" He continues the story. "Having looked for me all over the house, Bree came outside. She must have been a little freaked out by the state she found me in. I wouldn't have blamed her if she had been scared or angry with me, but what she did was a defining moment in our marriage. She walked over and sat down next to me. She pulled me over close to her and laid my head in her lap and started rubbing her fingers through my freshly chopped hair and let me cry like a baby. She didn't tell me I was crazy or yell at me for shaving my head. She didn't try to fix me. She was just quiet and sat with me." Every marriage is tested at some time. So are parent-child relationships, sibling relationships, other family relationships, and even relationships between close friends. And with that testing, hope can become very hard to find. But to borrow from someone we all know, if you have faith, like a teeny tiny mustard seed, God can work with that. The answer might come through therapy, it might come through honest communication. The answer might come in holding each other accountable for finding joy in life together. The answer might come in forgiving and forgiving and forgiving some more. It will probably come from a combination of all that. And yes, it sometimes comes with having to say goodbye. But too often we give up on each other too soon. The Facebook and Instagram shots we see of the relationships and lives of each other often hide the hurt and the scars. We all have hurt and scars. Every relationship has them, but often they can be endured and hope can be reborn. There can be resurrection. That's kind of a theme for Christians, folks. But we should also remember, before experiencing resurrection in this life, part of us has to die. Melanie, her legs are dead, more or less. They always have been. Trevor, he lived through his eyes dying. So many dreams died with their ailments. But together they found resurrection. They found new hope. Ryan's true self was dead to himself, to the point that he put the plan together to finish the job. But through the words of a counselor, he came to find he didn't need to be dead inside and didn't need to die. He found resurrection, new hope. And what's hard to say to everyone right now is this: spiritual growth, it always is found on a path of personal death and resurrection. Part of us has to die to realize something stronger, something better. And sometimes this has to happen in our relationships too. Certainly in every marriage and probably in every relationship that really, really matters in our lives, there comes a time when a bit of us has to die so the relationship can survive and grow. I think that's what you see in the story of James and Bree. He dies in that driveway. His heart opens wide with grief, and part of him dies with his son. And any notion Bree has of just taking care of himself or blaming him for losing it or walking away, it dies. And she enfolds him with compassion. Her needs become secondary as she becomes the answer to his prayer, God, where are you? Not every relationship works out, be it a marriage or friendship. I know that, you know that too. There probably are people that will be here today that I have helped escape toxic situations, but that's still a death too. And there can be resurrection. God brings hope out of situations that are desperate. God wants us to live in hope. God wants us to know joy. God wants us to rise again. And yeah, sometimes we want God to please just get a move on with it. Sometimes we've exceeded our limit and exceeded it again, and we feel like we just could die. But don't give up. That's when hope can be restored and resurrection comes. In the Greek myth of Pandora's box, a story that mirrors the tale of Eve that's coming in a couple chapters in our Bible, Pandora opens a box given to her by Zeus, a box he's warned her not to open because it contains something not for human eyes. Of course, she tastes the fruit, as it were. She opens the box, and every evil from disease to war is released on the world. But at the end, when creation has been corrupted and the deed is said and done, hope comes out of that box. Hope is of God. Hope is eternal, and it is for every one of us. There's a quote attributed to both Paulo Coelho and John Lennon. Everything will be all right in the end. If it's not all right, it's not the end. Hope awaits.